to cloud. And then I'm going to share my screen. Now, if this works right, you're going to see a PowerPoint come up, and I will talk about that. And I'm like you, I am a real newbie on Zoom. I'm not savvy at all. Hopefully you should see my picture up on the side so that you can see me actually talking as well. Regarding questions, it was brought to the League's attention here that it may be easier for you all to ask questions rather than using the chat right here, which I don't mind, but you can also email your questions to the League, and you can get an answer that way. We'll follow up on something that we might have talked about. You know, this is not in person, not the most ideal way, obviously, for us to, you know, to make this presentation, but we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. So let me see, I'm gonna go ahead and share then this PowerPoint, and we'll see what we got going there. Okay, can you see, let's see, can you, let's see, make sure. All right, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, no, I hope?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
great. Okay, terrific. All right, it's, okay, whoops, let me go back. As you know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encouraged informed and active participation in government. That's our mission. We work to increase understanding of major policy issues, and we advocate for legislative policies and changes that for the public good. We never support or oppose any political candidate or any political party. That's our mission. So we're nonpartisan, nonprofit. We were established in 1920, and you know, as you know, it's our 100-year anniversary, and also the 100-year anniversary of the women's right to vote. And we were an organization that preceded that and then followed up after women got the vote with how they can use that vote effectively. We do welcome men. It says League of Women Voters, but we do welcome men. In fact, we have lots of men, and we use them for things other than moving heavy boxes, by the way. We're very happy with all of the guys in our organization. And they've been invited since 1972. We serve all voters, and we promote good governance, we hope. We research, educate, advocate. That's who we are. So today, this is about Decision 2020. Your voice, your vote in this, and it won't take too long, honestly. Why people don't vote, which is interesting. Registering to vote, voting itself, what's on the ballot, and very importantly for many, many people, especially in this election, how to check on your vote by mail ballot, how to check that it's been sent to you, that it's been received by the Supervisor of Elections office, and whether it's been counted. So I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. It's very easy. All right, here's some reasons people give for not voting. They believe their vote doesn't matter, that what they have to say is irrelevant. They believe that the system is rigged. And many people do believe that. They believe that, they think that registering to vote or voting is confusing. It doesn't seem clear to them. And then there are some obstacles. Some people find that the polling place is too far away. Not for you all, obviously, since you have a polling place right there. But for some people, that is a problem. The line is too long. They can't afford to wait that long, or they've been removed from the voter registration roll, which sometimes happens. Here's some interesting statistics we thought. If you look at this, eligible Americans who didn't vote in 2016 were 92 million of us. That's a big chunk of people who could have but didn't. In the 2016 presidential election, you can see there that, look at the number of registered voters in Broward County, we're just talking, over 1 million, and the number of those registered voters who actually vote. And then the difference is the number of non-voters. And you know that those people who choose not to vote can make a difference, because you can look there. The difference in statewide between candidates for president in 2016 was 112,000 or 113,000 about, and we had 333,000 about who chose not to vote. So, you know, people don't realize how powerful the is. In the midterms, we had something similar. Midterm elections typically have much less participation among voters. And again, same number of voters, about fewer, note that fewer voted in that election. And people chose not to vote. And there were 32,000 votes that separated the two candidates for governor. So it does, again, it does make a difference. By the way, Broward County is pretty well represented in terms of eligible voters who are registered to vote. There are many organizations, including the League of Women Voters, who go out and make sure that people who could vote are at least registered to vote. And Broward County has done quite well in that. The problem is that many of these people who register to vote don't actually go out then and exercise that. And, you know, even from the very beginning, the right to vote by those in power has always been met by the fight to vote with those who have less power. That's really been the history of not just our democracy, but pretty much any democracy. Bottom line, though, is voting benefits the people who vote. Okay, so you know about, I imagine, your John Knox Village, your home, you have registered voters. This is not a problem. I'm assuming most of you are at least 18, so we're pretty good with that. But you might have grandchildren that choose not to, or haven't bothered to get around to it yet. And you can't obviously have a felony conviction unless that right to vote has been restored. If you haven't registered, you can register online. You don't have to go anywhere. You can change your party affiliation or register at least 29 days before an election. And all you have to do, you just need to have a Florida driver's license or Florida ID, and you have to just know the last 4 digits of your social security number. All right, this is one of the questions that sometimes people have, and that is, let me get this over here a little bit, list maintenance. And what list maintenance is, it removes eligible voters from the rolls if they haven't voted for 4 years. And that would mean 2 general election cycles, like 2 presidential elections. The supervisor of election, if that happens, if they take you off the rolls, they have to send you a notification before they remove you. But here's the problem. Notices are frequently unread. You get something in the mail, assume it's nothing, you don't open it, you don't read it. Voters may have moved and the notifications cannot be forwarded. So if you moved, you may not, and you've not voted for 2 years or 4 years, you may think you're still registered to vote, but you may not. You may have been removed from the rolls. And oftentimes voters first notice that they're not registered when they get to the polling place and learn they're no longer on the rolls. That's one of the advantages of vote by mail. If you request a vote by mail ballot and you're not registered, it'll show up right then. You'll know that you have been removed because you haven't voted. So it may not apply to you. You're on this video conference here, so I would imagine that you are an interested, registered, active voter. But if you know other people, you might suggest that to them if they've not voted in a long time. Oh dear, it's not letting me go forward. That's not good. There we go. All right, so be ready to vote. All right, so what's on the election? Well, you know that there's a presidential race. I'm pretty sure you know about that. Also, all the U.S. House of Representatives, as you know, they have to be elected every 2 years. Florida state senators and representatives, many of them are there. There are 6 Florida constitutional amendments that are on. There are 2 county charter questions, And there are 20 cities that have commission elections and questions. And there are 3 cities that have local charter amendments. So depending upon, you're in Pompano, so we don't have any local charter amendments, I don't believe, on ours. But we do have some commission elections. Retention of Florida Supreme Court and District Court of Appeals, they will also be on this election, on this ballot. And a Broward Circuit Judge and Broward Countywide offices are already there too. The last day to register to vote for anybody who is not registered is October the 5th. And early voting and vote by mail, of course, are available. And 22 early voting sites if you choose to use those. Just a bit about our judicial elections. We have in Florida a hybrid system of selecting our judges. The Supreme Court and the District Court of Appeals judges are appointed by the governor, and they serve for 6-year terms. Every 6 years, then, they face a yes or no retention. So you will see, I believe, one of them on there that you would either vote thumbs up or thumbs down on that judge. And this would be Supreme Court and District Court of Appeals judges. And they will be on your ballot. The Circuit Court and the County Court judges, the trial judges, the Circuit Court has 58 judges, and they hear criminal felonies, civil disputes over 30,000, etc., juvenile criminal cases, that kind of thing. County Court judges, 32 of them, they hear civil disputes less than 30,000. They do traffic, misdemeanors, things like DUI, shoplifting, etc. They all compete in nonpartisan elections. They are not appointed, but they have to be elected, and they serve for 6-year terms. All but one of these Circuit Court and County Court judges were decided in the August 18th election, just passed. One of those will be on your ballot, and that runoff will appear. All right. Now we're going to get to those constitutional amendments. Amending the Florida Constitution. We are, better than all the other states, I guess, because we have 5 ways to propose constitutional amendments. The number 1 way that it happens is through the legislature. And in order for the legislature to propose an amendment, you have to have 3/5 of the House and the Senate approval. So you have to have 60% of them say yes to those. Citizens Initiative, that requires approximately 720,000 validated voter petitions. And then they have to go that whatever the constitutional amendment proposal is, has to be approved by the Florida Supreme Court, that the language is clear and not misleading. And then we have, if you were around 4 years ago or 2 years ago, we had that Constitution Revision Commission. They meet every 20 years and they can propose amendments. And then we have another one coming up, the Taxation and Budget Reform Commission. They meet every 20 years and they can propose. And we could have a constitutional convention in Florida if we wanted to. Thankfully, we've never wanted to, so that's a good thing. Let me see, did I get that? Okay. All righty, so this year, 4 citizens initiated and 2 legislative proposed amendments will be on your ballot. Remember that Florida amendments have to be approved by 60% of the voters in order to pass. So one of them has to do with citizenship requirement and voting, another about the minimum wage, another about open primaries. The 4th one is about amendment approval process. Another one is one about Save Our Homes, Homestead Tax benefits. And another one is on veterans property tax benefits. So let's look at number 1. That's about citizenship. It was sponsored by a citizen initiative, which means they had to get all of those petitions signed. So it is citizenship requirement to vote in Florida elections. The summary of it is that it provides that only U.S. citizens who are at least 18 and a permanent resident of Florida may vote and register to vote, should be qualified to vote in Florida election. it changes one word in the Constitution. And our Constitution, by the way, when we have amendments, we simply change the language in our Constitution. It's not like the US Constitution where we actually add numbered amendments. Our amendment process is change the wording. So this is what is changed. It changes from every citizen in the United States to only a citizen of the United States. Okay, so here's the pros on that one. It's pretty straightforward. It changes every to only. The pros are that it clarifies the wording to remove the possibility of voting by undocumented persons. That is the premise of the group that sponsored this. The con is it's unnecessary language change and doesn't change anything because you can't already you can't vote if you're not a citizen. So it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't, sometimes it doesn't want me to go. Okay, yes, go back. I wanted to go over this. Sometimes one of the best things to help voters decide whether they are for or against an amendment is to see who supports it and who opposes it. And this is without comment. We just gather who we can. Now, as we move closer to the actual election, I would suppose that there will be many, many more organizations in support or in opposition to the various amendments. But this is what we found so far. Supporting organizations are the Florida Citizens Voters. That's the sponsor of this amendment. And the chairman, John Loudon, I believe is how you say his name, is the leader of this group called the Florida Citizens Voters. It is a political committee funded by secret donors. And no one has been able to find out who those donors are. Nobody knows where the money came from. But in order for, just so you know, in order for an amendment to be placed to a citizens initiative, at least, it takes literally millions of dollars to do it. It's very expensive because you have to verify every single signature that comes in, and you have to pay for that. Opposing organizations so far we found is the League of Women Voters of Florida and the Sun Sentinel. All right, the second amendment is one on the minimum wage. It's a citizens initiative as well, sponsored by a group called Florida for Fair Wage. And what it does would raise Florida's minimum wage. So the summary of this amendment increases the state minimum wage to $15 in 20, I can't see part of it.
Norman?
Yeah, thank you.
Come here, dear.
Okay. In 2026. And then it raises the minimum wage to $10 per hour effective 9/3/21. So that would be next year. And then thereafter, the minimum wage increases.
Phyllis Likey, please mute yourself.
Yeah, someone has their microphone not unmuted. You need to mute it.
It's Phyllis Likey. Please mute yourself.
There you go. You're on. Thereafter, minimum wage increases yearly by $1 an hour until it reaches $15 in 2026. And after this date, future increases shall revert to being adjusted for inflation. So it's interesting to know what is then the Florida's minimum wage right now. It's $8.56 an hour. So the pros on this one is to allow minimum wage workers to earn enough money to afford basic household necessities, including housing, food, childcare, and etc. Right now, the poverty rate for a family is about 18,000 to 20,000. People who work for minimum wage don't make that much. And so all of those things add up, and it's very difficult for minimum wage workers. The cons are that the added expenses will hurt businesses because there'd be less hiring and fewer hours, and also labor costs, as always, would probably be passed on to consumers. Can I keep moving this? It doesn't want me to go. Okay.
This is Jeannie Jordan.
All right, supporting organizations.
I have
Supporting organizations are these: the FFL, Florida for Fair Wage, and this was the group that sponsored it. we found out it was heavily funded by an Orlando attorney, John Morgan. And I believe he was also one of the ones who pushed to have the amendment for medical marijuana as well. Organized Florida, the Sun Sentinel, League of Women Voters of Florida all support this. The opposing organizations are the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association oppose it. All right, Amendment 3, open primary. This, again, a citizens initiative, sponsored by a group called All Voters Vote Incorporated. And what it does is it would allow all registered voters to vote in a primary regardless of their political affiliation. And it establishes a two-tier open primary system. So as you know, right now we have a closed primary in Florida. So when August 18th was a primary election, so only registered Democrats could vote for the candidates that were running for office as Democrats, and they chose their candidate for the party. Likewise, only registered Republicans could vote for candidates in their party. If you were a third-party organization, you belong to one of those, or you are an unaffiliated voter, that is that you have no party affiliation, then you were not allowed to vote at all. So in this case, all candidates for an office would appear on the same primary ballot, and only the two highest vote getters would advance to the general election. So everybody would vote in the primaries for the various candidates. All of the candidates, whether they were Republican, whether they were Democrat, whether they were third party, they would all be listed on the ballot, and then voters would choose their candidate. So it could mean that two Republicans or two Democrats would win, so you would have they would advance then to the general election. It could, and if only two candidates qualified, then no primary would be held. So if only two people qualified, the winner would then be determined in a general election. The candidates, according to this particular amendment, it states that the candidate's party may or may not be listed on the ballot. So you as a voter would not necessarily know the party affiliation of the person for whom you were voting, because they could, but they don't have to list that on there as well. If this passed, it would take effect on January 1st, 2024. And just one other thing that is interesting that you should know, if it already in Florida, we have what we call universal primaries. And this happens when, let's say, that only two candidates running, or two or three candidates running for an office, all happen to be either Democrat or all happen to be Republican. And so in other words, you can only choose from Democrats, you couldn't choose from Republicans. When that happens, and there's no other party person running at all, when that happens, then everybody votes anyway. So no matter what party you belong to, because otherwise it would be very unfair. Then whichever party will have those two candidates, they get to choose who becomes that next representative or senator or whatever, and nobody else really has a voice in it. So the state already does this. This takes it just a step more. Okay, so here's the pros and cons on that. Pro, this is a necessary step to bring nonpartisan voters into the process. Approximately a third of all the state voters in the state of Florida are nonpartisan. In Broward County right now, just for your information, about a little more than half of all voters are Democrat, are in the Democratic Party. About 25, maybe 30% are registered Republicans, and the others are either non-party or third party. So this would bring everybody in to be able to vote. The con is this is detrimental, or may be detrimental, to our political system. Many people who've studied this, believe there are better ways to make the process more equitable than this top two system. In other words, some people think that we could have a way to have open primaries, but they think that only being able to choose two people to end up facing each other could necessarily limit it, especially if there were many, many people, running for the office. The top two could potentially only get like 15% and 20%. And because there were so many others, they end up the ones who get to face each other. And also, some people say, some of the con people say, it doesn't really open the primaries, but instead effectively eliminates primaries by pitting candidates from opposing parties against one another even before the general election. And others argue that there's a potential that it could suppress Black representation in the legislature. All right, supporting organizations. The supporting organizations are All Voters Vote. That's the sponsor of this amendment. So what we found out was, and this was also the Sun Sentinel did some work, not us, they did the work. It was substantially funded by someone named Miguel Fernandez. He is chairman of a private investment firm called MBF Healthcare Partners, and Florida and Fair and Open Primaries also. And then the Sun Sentinel supports this amendment. Opposing organizations are all of these. So if you look at these, both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party oppose this. The League of Women Voters, People Over Profits, and you can look at many of the organizations who are opposed to this one. And you would, in order to find out what their reasoning are, you can go to their websites and take a look as to what their reasoning are. Okay, Amendment 4 is voter approvals of constitutional amendments. And it is also a citizens initiative sponsored by a group named Keep Our Constitution Clean. And it's by voters in 2 elections, not just 1. It requires that constitutional amendments be approved by voters in 2 successive elections in order to become effective. So the current requirement for passing an amendment is 1 election with 60% of the vote. This would require that amendments are passed by voters in 2 successive elections, each with 60% of the vote. And just for your information, not only amendments would this apply to, but it would also apply to state tax or fee proposals that have to be approved by 2/3 of voters then in 2 separate elections as well. And this is a nifty little graphic really that kind of shows you visually what this would look like. So if there is a citizens initiative or any particular one, method of getting it on. So the way we have it now is that top graph there in beige. So we put it to the voters, and if the amendment is rejected by the voters, it stops there, it doesn't happen. If the amendment is approved by 60% of the voters, then that amendment is added to the Constitution. The way this would be is, if you look at the blue graph here, you can see same thing. Amendments are placed on the ballot. If the amendment is rejected, same thing, that's the end of the road. In this case, if the amendment is passed by 60% of the voters, then it has to appear on the next election and has to face voters again. And this time, if the amendment is rejected by voters, it stops. If the amendment is passed again, then it goes on. So here's the pro. The pro would reduce the number of nuisance or frivolous amendments. Some of the people who think this is a good idea are those that they go back to, I think it was It was the Pregnant Pig Amendment. Some of you might remember that. And at the time, it only required 50% of the voters to approve an amendment. Well, this was they wanted to put in the Constitution something about how pregnant pigs were kept in cages that were too small and was really kind of cruel. And they couldn't get a law passed, so they tried a constitutional amendment, and it passed. And a lot of people said, oh, that's really stupid. We shouldn't have pigs in our Constitution. So what the voters did on that one is they passed a constitutional amendment that said you had to have at least 60% of the vote to pass it. But this one says there are too many amendments that people have to consider. They're nuisance, they're frivolous, and this would be a way to reduce the number of amendments that appear on our ballots. The con says it would make it very difficult to propose amendments and pass amendments via the Citizens Initiative. So just some examples of citizens 2 years ago: the medical marijuana, which was passed 4 years ago, the environmental land acquisition, where we were to buy environmental lands. These were all citizens initiatives that were passed 6 years ago, that one 6 years ago, and they used the Citizens Initiative because the legislature would not do these things. And so that's why that happened. Another con would be it would delay enacting a voter-approved amendments. So if you have to face 2 elections, then instead of it happening soon, it happens later if you have to go after it 2 times. And it would make it costly for Citizens Initiative proposals to get on the ballot, because they go through the first process and then they would have to go back and do advertising and the like to try and get it passed a second go around. Okay, supporting organizations of this one are Keep Our Constitution Clean. They are the sponsor. This group is funded through a secretive nonprofit group, and the Sun Sentinel and the Orlando Times, Sun Sentinel did some work on this. I think also the Tampa Bay Times did, and tried to find out who this nonprofit group was. All they could find out that it is linked to a lobbying organization that Florida Power and Light and U.S. Sugar Corporation and other big businesses use. So there isn't any specifics on who it really is, who funded it, this particular Citizens Initiative. And another supporting organization of this amendment is the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Opposing organizations include all of these: the ACLU, Common Cause, League of Women Voters. You can see several newspapers, etc. So Southern Poverty Law Center, all of those are in opposition. All right, Amendment 5. This is on homestead taxes. This was proposed by the Florida legislature. And what this one would do is extend the period of time people have to transfer their Save Our Homes tax benefit. Right now, a person who sells his or her home in Florida has 2 years to purchase another home and keep their tax savings benefit. So it increases the period during which a person can transfer his or her Save Our Homes benefits to a new homesteaded property from 2 years to 3 years. Just a side note, 100% of the House and Senate approved this amendment proposal. That's like in Florida, kind of unheard of. The pro, it allows more times for homeowners to purchase a new home and still transfer the Save Our Homes benefit. Save Our Homes, as you know, limits yearly homesteaded property assessment increases to no more than 3% per year, now, even if your house value goes up. So it's a big saving to people who stay in their homes for a long time. The con is local governments would lose some money. So, you know, obviously it's tax dollars. So if they extend it to another year, and the reason I read that, one of the reasons that some people sell their home and they're building a new home. Well, if that home is not completed, if it's completed even like in January instead of December like it was promised, in those 2 years, they lose that homestead. So this said, it gives people a little bit of wiggle room to be able to do that. So, but anyway, local governments, of course, would lose some of their tax money. Statewide estimates said a 1.8 million reduction, this is statewide, in 2021 in lost tax revenue, and growing to an annual reduction of 10.2 million as more people used it. All right, supporting organizations for this are the Florida legislature, as I said, who suggested it, and the Sun Sentinel, the Tampa Bay Times, and all 3 property appraisers in Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade all support this particular one. Opposing organizations for the moment, none. Amendment 6, veterans tax discount, proposed by the Florida legislature as well. This one allows a homesteaded property tax to be a discount to be transferred to the surviving spouse of a deceased veteran with permanent combat-related disabilities. So the exemption continues to be equal to the percentage partial or total permanent disability of the veteran. So 100% of the House and Senate also approved this amendment. All right, basically what this does, it corrected an oversight in a previous voter approved tax benefit exemption for veterans 65 and older with combat-related disabilities. This allows surviving spouse to continue to remarry or move to another home. The con is local government tax revenue would be somewhat negatively impacted. Not particularly a big problem, but of course, anytime you give any sort of exemption to homestead or property taxes, of course, there's a decrease in tax revenue to the local communities. Okay, so Amendment 6, the supporting organizations are the Florida legislatures who originated it, the Sun Sentinel, again, all 3 property appraisers in Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade, and so far, no opposers. All right, there are also just 2 charter questions that for the Broward County Charter that will be on your ballot. One approves the special law and enabling the county commission to continue serving as ex officio clerk of court, and the county and commission, and enabling the county to continue serving as the auditor and custodian of all county funds. Okay, now it sounds much more complicated than what this actually is. These duties were outlined when Broward had its charter passed by voters in 1974. All those duties that the county clerk has were outlined at that time. So in 2018, we had a Florida amendment that was passed that affected the duties, defined the duties statewide of the clerk of courts. And so it added 2 extra duties to the clerk of courts that were currently being dealt with at the county commission. And so all this does is it allows Broward to reverse the effect of that 2018 Florida amendment, which required transferring those duties to the clerk of courts effective in 2025, because that's when it was supposed to go into effect. The legislature created a law that would allow this to happen. In other words, they would allow Broward to not pass on 2 of these extra duties to the clerk of court and let the county administrator take care of them as the county administrator has done for the past 30 years or more, 40 years almost. If Broward, now this is not an amendment, this is a charter question, so this would require 50% plus 1 vote, and then it would allow the clerk of court duties to remain as outlined in our current charter, okay? All right, so there's not really pro or con, you either okay or not. Broward Charter question number 2, this allows county ordinances to supersede conflicting municipal ordinances for those transportation projects that were funded as part of that 2018 voter approved transportation surtax. So remember in 2018, Broward voters approved money to create some more modern transportation for the county to stop the congestion. Well, that requires that they have to build stations, and they have to have buses and light trains, etc., in the various communities. So what this does, supersede conflicting municipal ordinances. So the county would get priority over the municipality. So the county ordinances regulating zoning, permitting, construction, operation, or administration for utilizing a selected transportation site prevail over local municipal ordinances. In other words, the county gets the say-so, not the city. The county would be required to hold a public hearing in the city to fully explain the plan. Now, it is my understanding, I read about this, that the properties belong to the county, that these, that I suppose train stations and that kind of thing would be located on, but they're located in the various cities. So the county says the county would be required to hold a public hearing in the city to fully explain the plan. Any buildings erected on the site would have to adhere to existing city aesthetic theme. So some have themes, like, you know, you can only have them certain colors, for example, and it has to be a Mediterranean style or the like, so that they would have to adhere to the existing city's aesthetic theme. So that would take a 50% +1 required pass. Now, I haven't seen a lot about this particular question in the newspapers yet. So I would pay attention to what shows up in the Sun Sentinel, especially about maybe getting the city's point of view, because I did look to see if cities had a position on this. And aside, I think, from Weston, I really couldn't find much yet on it. So I just don't think maybe it's been talked about enough on it. So you might want to pay attention to that one. All right, so that's what you're going to see on your ballot. So quickly, 3 ways you can vote, as you know. You can vote by mail, you can early vote, or you can vote on election day at your precinct. And if you don't know where your precinct is, it can be found on your voter information card, which you may or may not know where it is, or you can go to the Broward Supervisor of Election website. Here's the league's recommendation. We recommend that you request a vote by mail ballot for the upcoming elections, even if you intend to vote in person. And we call it a just in case. If you can't go in person to vote, or if you don't feel safe going in person to vote because, for example, of the virus, remember that receiving a vote by mail ballot does not require that you use it. And vote by mail and absentee ballot are exempt. You can still vote in person. You don't even have to bring that with you to your voting place. It's nice if you do, because they can put it in, but you don't have to do that. There really isn't a risk that people would vote twice using this way, because if you haven't used the vote by mail ballot, there has been nothing registered. If you vote in person, that's what's registered. If you send in your ballot and it's counted, and then you're not sure and you want to go vote again, the computer won't let you. And even if it did let you, once they're all coded with your name, etc. So whichever one got counted first then is the one that would count. Now, you wouldn't want to vote twice anyway, because hello, it's against the law, but just for your information. All right, vote by mail. Request vote by mail as soon as possible. It is mailed to you 33 to 40 days before an election. So they should be in the mail. If you requested it already, it should be in the mail probably this week. Complete and place it in the provided prepaid envelope, mailing envelope. Sign the outside of the envelope. When they are rejected, that is usually why somebody forgot to sign to. but it's useful to include your phone number and your email address so that the supervisor of elections can contact you if there's a problem with your ballot. And if you mail it in soon enough, they will. They'll get back to you so that you can correct it. And if you registered or updated online, you remember to sign the envelope the same way as you did your Florida driver's license or Florida ID. So because it needs to be the same signature. Then you return it to the SOE. We recommend that you mail early, mail by October 19th. Or you can return that ballot to any of the early voting places. But remember, it has to not be postmarked by November 3rd. It has to arrive by November 3rd, or it's not counted. All righty, here's what you do. This is what it looks like. We like visuals. You mark your choices in a black pen. You completely fill in the oval. You put it in the privacy envelope that's included there. Then you put it in the mailing envelope with in the sleeve, right in the envelope. It's pre-addressed, postage is paid, you sign your name, and you write the date on the out ballot until October 24th. But if you wait that long, there is a really good chance that it won't come in time. I mean, it's especially with some of the problems that have been discussed about the U.S. Postal Service not being able to deliver things on time. There's a number here that you might want to jot down, and especially the website, browardsoe.org, because that's the place where you can get many, many questions answered. Broward SOE, stands for Supervisor of Elections.org. Okay. All right. We recommend that you mail early by October 19th. We do all of these things. Remember, you can drop that off anytime. Has to be postmarked. Has to be 7 p.m. on election day. You can mail it, or you can drop it off at a drop-off box. There are 2 drop-off boxes and any early voting sites. So all early voting sites, and you don't have to wait in the long line to vote. There will be a special line for people who wish to just drop off their vote by mail. In other words, you don't want to trust putting it in the mail, and early voting starts on October 19th. So if you still haven't mailed your ballot by October 19th, the League of Women Voters suggest that it's not a bad idea then to just go ahead and take it to one of the early voting sites. And you can find them, there are many. In Pompano, there's, I think Herb Skolnick is one, and then there's the one, Emma Olson Center is one. Any time between. And remember, there will be a separate line for people who want to drop it off there. There are also 2 drop-off boxes that directly go to the Supervisor of Elections. There's only 2 of them. One is downtown Fort Lauderdale. Those are 24/7 until Election Day. So remember that the election is on November 3rd. The early voting stops November 1st. So let's say you are the world's worst procrastinator and you've got this mail-in ballot, you haven't sent it in, you didn't get around to going to a drop-off, or rather one of the early voting sites. Well, then your other option is you can take it to one of these 2 places, and we have some pictures there for you so you can see what they look like. There's only 2. One of them is downtown Fort Lauderdale. And the other one, and you can get it, we have the address right there. And the other one is at the other office, and that's behind the Lauderhill Mall. So you can do that. And again, to find out where those early voting sites are, or you need the election, or rather the drop box, it's browardsoe.org. All right, our recommendation, due to concerns about possible postal service delays, we recommend that you mail your vote by mail ballot by October 19th, or if you haven't mailed your ballot, then take it to an early voting location. We think those are your safest bets. Or you can always vote in person. All right, now, how do you track if they got it, if you're worried about that? And I always check. So you would go, this is what the front page of the SOE looks like, right? So it's right there. So notice we've circled there where it says check your voter status and update, okay? And then it says, if you look here, check the status down in the drop down, and it says voter information. So if you click on check the status, it'll come up with voter information lookup, free site. And so what you do is you put in your first name, your last name, and your date of birth, click that you're not a robot, and then it will bring up your information. Okay, and this is what you'll see. So it's going to look to see. So if you, and you'll see this little blue box here. Voter status. So this is, we got it from the presidential preference. So that was, remember, back in March. So it will show it's been requested, and it will show when you requested your ballot. And then it will show your ballot status, that it was sent and when it was sent to you. So if you're worried about you didn't get it, you can check and see whether it was sent or not. Then it will also come here and say, did they receive it? So you can, when you requested it, when you received it, and note that they give you dates when it was received. And then it will tell you when it has been, if it's been counted. So you can check all the way through if your ballot has been received. That's a good thing to do. I mean, it gives you a lot of peace of mind that, okay, I'm good. All right. You can, of course, vote at your convenience during early voting period. That's October 19th through November 1st, Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can vote at any of the 22 early voting locations in the county. It doesn't have to be one near you. It can be anywhere. You need, of course, your picture ID with a signature to early vote. So when you vote in person, you have to have a picture ID with a signature. Or you can vote in person on election day. And you have a precinct there at John Knox if you choose to use that. Again, you have to have your ID and you have to have a signature. If a voter's ID doesn't display a signature, the voter will need to supply a second form of identification that does. So you can use two forms. One has to have a picture at least, and the other one has to have a signature. And voters can only vote at their precinct polling place, and you cannot drop off an absentee ballot at this time. And of course, your polling place is listed there right on your information cards. And because of the virus, though, you need to note that sometimes your precinct can be changed. So you might want to check Broward SOE before. These are, you can see, it's easy to find an ID that you can use. Most people will use their Florida driver's license, but you can use your passport, neighborhood association IDs, as long as it's got a signature and a picture, veterans health cards, etc. Lots of, even a concealed weapons permit, as long as it has your signature and your picture. All right, just a little bit of promotion for us. If you're looking for information about candidates, because the League of Women Voters would never give you pros and cons of candidates at all, not like amendments and the like. You can visit a place called Vote 411. It is sponsored by the Leaguers, and it gives you election information. All you have to do is you just type in Vote 411. It will take you to a place where you can sign in with your name and your address. Now, actually, you don't even need your name. You just need your address. And it will pull up exactly what's going to be on your ballot, who the candidates are, etc. Now, what the League of Women Voters has done is given the candidates, all of them, we write and email and call all of the candidates who are running, and we ask them the same questions about their positions on various things that are of interest and concern to voters. And we will publish, we put in there, and you can see it side by side, 2 or 3 candidates, what their answers are. Now, if there's no answer there, we sent it to them multiple times. They chose not to answer. But it's a way for you to look before you actually get your ballot, what's on there, and a way for you to look to see what candidates have to say about their positions on various questions. And it is totally safe because the only thing you're putting in is your address. And the League of Women Voters, once you get off there, it doesn't save anything so that there's no cloud anywhere where it's going, etc. And this is what it looks like on that page. Just you can see, ask very little information. Your address, that's all you really need to. And then it pulls up all of that information for you. All right, so what can you do now? Well, if you are concerned, you can check your voter status by going on the SOE website. You can update your address if you recently moved to make sure that you're voting in the same place, the right place rather. If your signature has changed and it no longer looks like it used to look like, you can update your signature online. You can check to see if your vote by mail ballot was received or actually was sent as of now. And once you get it, you send it out, whether it's been received and ultimately if it's been counted. And yes, the census is still going on. I hope all of you have participated and answered the census questions. It is so remarkably important to Broward County. The data is guaranteed by federal law to be confidential. Only statistics are publicly available. Personal information cannot, by law, federal law, be released for 72 years. Anybody who works for the census, whether they're going door to door or whether they're working the computers or calling, they have to take a confidentiality oath. Penalties are $250,000 and or 5 years in prison. So, I mean, it's a big deal. You don't mess around with that. No census information is shared with immigration agencies or local law enforcement agencies. That's against federal law. And you yourself would not be asked for any citizen information, no social security number, no bank account numbers. In fact, if anybody asked you for that, you know that's a scam and you don't want to go any further. Internet, an invitation was sent to you. If you lost it, don't know if you did it, there's a number that's down at the bottom there, My 2020, I can't see mine because I've got a scrollingaway.gov. Phone, mail, in person, if you haven't answered, someone will likely come and try to visit you. All right, so why is it important? Well, the most important thing is two things. Power determines the number of seats our state gets in Congress and is used to redraw district boundaries. And money. Broward, if you look at that one statistic there, Broward lost 10 years ago in that 2010 census, we lost $21.1 million because we were undercounted by 14.6 thousand people. So that's a lot of money to lose because people weren't counted. All righty, so that's us. You can use us, you can invite us to speak. We prefer to go in person, but you know, whatever. We do what we have to do in these troubling times. We have knowledgeable speakers. We've got dynamic presentations on all sorts of things. We got a really great one on the women who helped make the 19th Amendment a reality. We do voter registration drives. We moderate candidate forums because we're nonpartisan. We produce voter guides. They're on our league website. We have a directory of elected officials, etc. So that's us. A voice for citizens, a force for change. So let me just quit sharing here. Let's see, stop the share, and I'm back. And I missed somebody who never got in because I didn't see him, darn it. So that's it. If you want to unmute and anybody has a comment or a quick question, I can answer that. Otherwise, we can, you can send your questions to the League of Women Voters or the website, or I believe even Marge said you can send them through your organization and we will try and get back. Also visit our website because that's a good place to have many questions answered. You can find answers right there. All righty.
Jane?
Yes.
Thank you. Is it very helpful? I did have a question on Amendment 3. It mentions only state and government.
That's correct.
So the national,
State, not up somebody. That's correct. It is only for state. It is not, I'm glad you brought that up. I should have mentioned that. It is not for federal. So it wouldn't be for US House of Representatives, US Senator, nothing like that. Only for local, only for state.
Sharing a couple of the readouts of on the amendments, and I note that on Amendment 2, you said that the raise to $10 would be on September 3rd, 2021. I find that it's September 30th in 3 other sources.
Oh, okay. I may have, I'm going to mark that down because I may have mistyped.
If that's true. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I was wondering what the league's feeling on Amendment 5 and 6. That are they really constitutional type items?
No, that's the league tech, and we just didn't want to get into that. On Amendment 5 and 6, technically the League of Women Voters opposes those, not on the merits of them at all. That's why I didn't want to get into a big discussion. But since you asked, I will. The league doesn't think that any taxation, any revenue things belong in the Constitution. They believe those should be laws, and they've had a long-standing position on this. So anytime there is a constitutional amendment that is designed to formulate taxes, then they will take a sort of a constant opposition to it. And that is no reflection on the merits of those two, which is why we didn't want to, a lot of people respect the League of Women Voters' opinions so much that we were reluctant to put it down there as an opposition because they would just assume there's some other reason. And that is the other reason, because as a general principle, the League does not believe that taxation issues should be included in the Constitution, period. Should be law.
And
I have a comment.
it's approved by 100% of the legislature. Why isn't that just law?
Because prior to this, there were constitutional amendments that expanded because homestead exemption is written into the Constitution. They can't just pass a law to change it. It has to be another constitutional amendment, because remember, it's changing the wording. Likewise with the one on the one for veterans, and that's why the League opposes all of this, because it makes it impossible to make the necessary tweaks on taxation. And so that's why.
isn't that the same for Amendment 1, that it would make it very hard to revise the language from every citizen to only a citizen?
Make it hard? No, because it doesn't really change it. You still have to be a citizen. So every citizen and only a citizen really doesn't change anything. Frankly, it's a political move. That's all I'll say about that, because I'm the League of
It just
Women.
appears to be important, but it really isn't.
Yes, it does. I mean, in terms of what it would effectively do, it wouldn't do anything. It's just kind of gimmicky, you know?
Isn't it the difference between a law and something that's in the Constitution, though?
Already in the Constitution.
Yeah, it's in the Constitution. It says every citizen. This is sort of there's a national move to do this. I think this same group is pushing 2 similar amendments in 2 other states, and I believe Mississippi might be one of them. And there's 2 states. I'm trying to think. I think it might be Arizona and I think either North or South Dakota who has only a citizen. Because in our Constitution, it says you have to be a citizen to vote. So whether it's every citizen or only a citizen doesn't really change anything. But I mean, some people think that would make it would make it easier to make sure that undocumented people didn't vote. I'm not, you know, that's their argument. Those who support it.
For those of you who are on the FLICRA email list, they just sent out a email about these amendments that boil them down to common English and give pros and cons. That I think it's a good document if you all saw it. Florida Life Care Residents Association. I'm sure most of
Yeah, I had a comment. We lost your picture, by the way, Jane.
Oh, I don't know where I went.
At least on my screen, anyhow.
I don't know. I'm still here. I'm just as beautiful as I was, I guess. I don't know.
But my comment related to the vote by mail ballot. My understanding was, and what I was suggesting to people when they were asking me, you know, when I was doing voter registration, if you receive a vote by mail ballot and then you decide not to use it, it was suggested when I called the Broward County SOE that you take the ballot with you then to your polling place and turn it in, which people did during the primary, I know, and they will void it. It goes into a special container and then they will void it. Was that your understanding also?
Right, it is, but you don't have to do that.
No, you don't have to, but it was suggested
that's exactly.
I guess that was a way of having an easier count for them.
That's exactly right. They would like for you to do that, but there's no requirement that you do that. So if you've forgotten it, can't find it, got tossed out, whatever, you don't have to worry about not being able to vote because you weren't able to produce that original vote by mail document. But yes, it's a good idea to take it. So because they'll destroy it right then.
Right. My other comment was, and just a reminder for the participants who I'm delighted to see we had so many, that, you know, our webinar today, which was given to us so well by the League of Women Voters, is sponsored by our own legislative committee here at John Knox Village. Fred Deppenbrock is the committee chairperson. And there's about 10 or 12 of us, or a little bit more than that, on the committee itself, and, you know, participated in working on various voting things that are coming up. So just so that people are aware.
And I want to make a comment that this particular presentation is thanks to you, Marge.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to go up to do the plans.
Okay.
If anybody cares, the legislative committee has put together a candidate forum type video that we did for the primary. This time is for the general election. Tom McKay is the host. And we're also going to we've put together a candidate